Well, today could be a day that shapes the future of Kansas City for years to come. Good morning. It is 6:05. It is so good to have you here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. And as always, even if you're on the road for spring break, you can stream us on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So today could be the final day of Kansas City City Manager Brian Platt being employed by this town. City Council is expected to meet today. They may very well decide on his future. Now, they could kick the can down the road. I'm hearing that they may ultimately end up doing that. But we will find out today whether or not they decide to go down that road, as they also have to figure out their $2.5 billion budget.
Now, he will have to wait 5 years to be eligible for a Hall of Fame of people who have been dismissed by this city. So,
yeah, that's a long list.
If that happens today, the clock will start then.
And he will be one of the more competent people who will have been fired, but also will join a long list of people who have been fired, as John noted. So with that being said, the question remains, why? Well, of course, 2 weeks ago now, this lawsuit got settled with a former Kansas City, Missouri City employee. Name is Chris Hernandez. And he's a guy who sued the city because, well, he thought that he was mistreated by Platt's office. He claims that he was told by Brian Platt to lie to the media. And, of course, he took this thing to court. He sued. He got a $900,000 settlement. The legal bills were about $600,000 from what I heard. So this was an excuse for a lot of people to go out there and try to get the scalp of Brian Platt. They have wanted this for a very long time. This goes back to when the guy was hired 4 years ago. They wanted his scalp. And they wanted his scalp 4 years ago for one reason and one reason only. He was a white guy who was hired as city manager back in 2020 when, of course, we had to do everything in the name of skin color. That was the stupidity of 2020. We know that. I mean, look back on that time. We were getting rid of legends and iconic figures like Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima on the front of their respective products, and we were taking away the Land O'Lakes Indian. But, of course, we were keeping the land. How mighty white of us. We were so dumb then. And people have not liked Brian Platt on the city council since then because he was hired as a white man in 2020. And this is the chance to get rid of him. This is what they're going after him for. And now there's a lot of people in this town who have political sway who are trying to help this guy save his job. And just so you know, just to be fully transparent, I mean, Brian Platt's been on the show a handful of times. I've seen him at various events around town. I've never hung out with the man in a personal setting, but I look from afar and I see a guy who's mostly done a pretty darn good job. Right? Fill the potholes, plow the roads, fix the street lights. I mean, it's kind of it's not a very glamorous job. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't do well. I'm just saying it's not like a super glamorous job. You kind of take a lot of the slings and arrows on behalf of the city council at times. You get a lot of crap from a lot of different people. But in the end, you do the basics. You're not in control of the schools. You're not in control of the police department. So put that stuff to the side. And really what you got to worry about is potholes and snow removal and trash pickup and things like that. And you do that halfway well, you improve that, which he has done, you're going to get good marks. But then you get this letter that you heard about here first, right here on KCMO yesterday. The Urban Council sent a letter to Mayor Lucas and the City Council calling for the firing of City Manager Brian Platt. They say here, Brian Platt has a well-documented pattern of racism, sexism, and retaliation against Black, Latino, and female employees, they write here. So they are alleging that Brian Platt is a racist. That's the worst thing you could call somebody in 2025 because, and they know that, the Urban Council knows that. That's exactly why they're doing it. Because you can't combat no, I'm not a racist. Like someone calls you a racist and then they say, oh yeah, prove you're not one. It's nearly impossible to do. I mean, what do you say, right? That's why that is the dirtiest thing you can call somebody without specific proof. And you can't say, well, he's gotten rid of or he's had beef with certain employees. I mean, the guy's a city manager in a major American city. Of course, he's going to have employees who are, yes, black, Latino, female, white, but he's going to have minority employees. What are you going to put the guy in a world where he can't fire anybody because of their skin color? And if he does, he gets called a racist? You can't run an operation like that. You can't run a city. You can't run a business like that. And anybody who spent 2 minutes in the real world understands this. So I don't know if the votes are there to stand up for what is right, but I also know this is going on. As the racial element becomes a factor, guess what's happening? There will be pressure on the city council today to fire Brian Platt under the guise of, if you do not, well, I guess you're a racist too. I guess you're just one of them. Yep. You see how this goes, John. You see the song and dance that's happening here. It's clear as day.
Yeah, well, as a longtime resident, this is unexpected at all,
Yeah. I mean, this is how the town's operated for far too long. So what can happen? Well, Quentin Lucas can stand up for what is right here. He's a lame duck mayor. He doesn't necessarily need the juice from the Urban League. He's got no future in politics here in Kansas City, and I don't think he does in Missouri. And I don't mean that like to be mean or a negative. He just, there is no path. Whatever Cleaver ends up doing, if Quentin Lucas can figure out a way to get into that seat, it's not going to be because of Emmanuel Cleaver. I promise you that much. He's going to have to figure out some other way to go about doing it, or he's, maybe looking at the other side of state line. I don't know. Just something to think about going forward here. There is not a path right now for him. So if he wants to do what is right and protect the guy that he lobbied for to have the job, who he also lobbied to have a contract extension just last year because he obviously thought he was doing a good job, well, now's the time to stand up, because if not, well, one thing will be very clear to anybody trying to do business in this town: the inmates are running the asylum.
Aha.
That's it.
Bigger picture for me, those undecided on wanting local control of the police force, please pay attention to what's going on here.
Bingo. Nailed that, too. Absolutely right. You think these hooligans can run a police department when they're going to fire a city manager because the Urban League says the guy's a racist without any evidence because, well, he's not black? That's the world we're living in right now. The inmates could be running the asylum. The mayor is going to be on the show coming up at 7:30, and this will be a big topic, obviously, that we discuss with him because everything about it is inherently wrong, and it's fascinating to me because it's everything that they claim to be fighting against, except they're the ones who are now pursuing it in the name of racial justice, when it's the opposite of that. What's actually going on here is the very definition of racism in large part. 913-408-7957. That is our text line and also our studio line here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. And something else to consider that I've been hearing on this front is that the mayor may not end up even replacing Brian Platt if they get rid of him until there's a new city council. So you could have an interim city or an interim city manager in this town for what, the next 2 years? During the World Cup, you're going to have an interim city manager. That is an absolutely outstanding idea. What a bunch of freaking Mensa members we've got in charge.
Oh, I've seen this movie because that person then will be out of town on vacation when the World Cup is here. Yeah. Isn't that the way the script goes?
That's right. That does sound about par for the course around here. You're right about that, John. So we're going to keep tabs on this. We also are going to talk to Kansas City Councilwoman Melissa Robinson at 8:30. She has agreed to join the show. She is in favor of getting rid of Brian Platt as city manager. I don't know where the mayor stands. I don't know if anybody knows where the mayor stands. So we'll try to get some information out of him coming up at 7:30 on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Coming up, well, I hate when media tries to find a storyline and then work backwards from there It'll shock you to learn that that's what happened over at Woke 41 on this story. And we'll get you the details on that coming up on 95.7 FM. You hate to see it, but it happens all the time, especially in local news. You know, you want to find an answer, you want to come to a conclusion, and then you backtrack from there. It's a tale as old as time. The Kansas City Star does it on the regular, and then they print it up in Des Moines, and then it gets shipped down here to 70U in Kansas City. But, you know, this happens on TV as well. Woke 41 had this piece headlined, JoCo Mom Reacts to School District's Joint Letter Regarding Special Education Funding. So the article goes on the note, and I've got a clip here from the piece on Woke 41. The Blue Valley, Shawnee Mission, and Olathe school districts wrote a joint letter on March 17th asking Kansas legislators to restore and increase special education funding to meet state requirements. So the insinuation right out of the gates there is that, well, the big bad state legislature is not doing its job and is not willing to properly fund special education and kids with special needs. And you know the immediate gut reaction to that.
How dare you?
Oh, my gosh. Now, I have young children. I want to see special education funded in this state as a resident. It is a very important thing for a legislature and a school district to do. We all believe that. I believe that's true of Republicans and Democrats and independents. I think everybody wants to fund the special education programs in the state of Kansas. I don't deny that for a second. But of course, that's not how the piece gets insinuated. And what Woke 41 decided to do was interview a mother who has a special needs child here in the Shawnee Mission School District. And here's a little bit of what that sounded like on Channel 41 last night, and then we'll get to some more actual reporting and news on this entire story.
It sets aside $601 million for special education. No additional funding combined with rising costs and a growing need means Johnson County schools would have to pull dollars from their general funds, which they say impacts all students and teachers. Olathe Public School Superintendent Dr. Brent Yeager signed the letter.
Students deserve the support when they're identified with special needs. And we can't say, hey, we don't have the funds to provide that. It's the law and the right thing for us to do to provide those supports.
Dr. Yeager says the joint letter was sent to raise awareness and encourage Kansans to hold elected officials responsible to support schools.
I feel like it's such a statement that this matters so much.
Dr. Yeager expects to know what funding will look like in the next couple of weeks.
So you heard it there. You heard it there in the reporting. The budget sets aside $601 million for special education funding in the state of Kansas. No additional funding combined with rising costs and a growing need means the Johnson County schools would have to pull dollars from their general funds, which they say would impact all students and teachers. So they are funding it, let's be clear. They're just not giving extra money that the districts are demanding for special education, which is a completely different story and narrative than how the story begins and what the headline reads.
My grandson is on the spectrum, and he attends, I think he's in the Shawnee Mission District, maybe Blue Valley, but one of the three that are in the letter. So I was interested in this, and I thought, okay, what's up?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we have the money. Exactly. And I'm like, okay, end of sentence, end of story.
Yes.
Yes, of course, pulling it out of the general fund affects everybody because it's the general fund. This is how businesses work.
Yes.
So and to your point, there's still money coming in.
There's still a lot of money coming in.
So I was interested, but I'm not upset.
Yeah, exactly.
After reading the story clearly.
And here is what somebody in the Kansas legislature sent to me when I asked them about this story last night. They wrote to me, what the school districts are not telling anyone is that they have been using the special education funding as a slush fund. And now that we, the legislature, have called them on it, they're squealing like pigs. It's the complex funding mechanism that they have a problem with. Plus, these reporters don't even know what to ask these people. They're being fed a load of crap by the superintendents and have no curiosity whatsoever. Well, that's what you get when you put reporters who are fresh out of undergrad onto the streets and do not know what they're doing.
And yet they stumbled onto the story
Yeah.
because the money is there.
Exactly.
And they did point that out.
Exactly. So the state set aside, how about this for a headline? State sets aside $600 million for special education funding. 1 year after, they got an extra $72 million on top of it. And now it's like, that's never enough. But if you question any of this, if you have any curiosity as to, who's actually right, who's wrong, how much money is needed, well, what do you hate the special needs kids? Can I share something personal with you? This, my daughter, oldest, Claire, she started kindergarten this year. And 1 month into her kindergarten year, she got like some award for treating other kids well. Obviously didn't get that from her father. No, I'm kidding. But she got some award for treating other kids well. And the main reason why is that there's a special needs girl with Downs in her class. And Claire had taken a liking to her and was kind of helping her out through her first month in school. And, as a parent with your oldest child going to school for the first time, it's that kind of pride and that kind of joy that you never experience in life at all until you see it through the lens of what your child just did in them being a good person and accomplishing something without your help and without your guidance whatsoever. We all care about special needs children. But you do not just endlessly throw money at things in the name of helping anybody. You still can run it like a business and have a process to the entire thing. We're a bit over 48 hours removed from the Tesla dealer on State Line Road having two Cybertrucks catching fire, as they wrote locally in the news. You mean they were lit on fire? Yes. It is being investigated as arson by the ATF and the FBI. We don't have an update right now in terms of where that investigation stands. There was no news on this front as of yesterday, no arrests, no anything like that. But you are getting this story out of Kansas City being talked about in national media and also by the White House press secretary. Caroline Leavitt addressed this string of Tesla dealerships getting attacked. You had a big one in Vegas where 5 trucks caught fire, air quotes. You had the 2 here in Kansas City. This has been happening all over the country. And yesterday, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had a clear message.
Tesla, there's a website that's trying to dox Tesla owners across the country and saying they're only going to take down personal information when people show that they've sold their cars. What's the administration going to do about that?
I haven't seen that website, but we certainly think it's despicable, the violence that has taken place against Tesla, the company, its employees, and also just Americans who have chosen to drive an electric vehicle. Many of them are Democrats, by the way. Democrats were big supporters of Tesla and of electric vehicles until Elon Musk decided to vote for Donald Trump. So we would like Democrats to also come out and condemn this heinous violence that we have seen. And I believe the Attorney General has said she's investigating these incidents as acts of domestic terrorism.
That's how you know these people have no values. They have no principles. And Caroline Leavitt rolled it out very well there. Democrats were big supporters of Tesla and electric vehicles before Elon voted for Donald Trump. They loved Tesla. They loved Elon. They thought they were saving the world one Tesla at a time. And now they hate him. Now you have members of Congress like Mark Kelly in Arizona trading in his Tesla for a gas-guzzling Tahoe. Dude, at least have the self-awareness to not let the jokes write themselves. At least get yourself another electric vehicle instead of being like, I always wanted this gas guzzler. Well, so you're telling me it was all for show. You're telling me your EV in general was one big virtue signaling sign of BS, which, you're entitled to have, but it just goes to show you the principles are lacking, the standards are lacking, and now that Elon had the audacity to vote for somebody they don't like, well, they want to destroy the entire company. That's what they're going for here. And you're seeing this now. There is a website called DogeQuest that has been created to dox Tesla owners nationwide. Kid you not. The website DogeQuest has reportedly published the personal details of Tesla owners. leading to concerns about privacy and safety. The site reveals the names, addresses, and phone numbers of Tesla owners on an interactive map and uses an image of a Molotov cocktail as a cursor. The operators of the site have stated they will only remove the information of Tesla owners who prove that they have sold their cars, according to 404 Media. The news site comes amid a number of attacks on Tesla properties, such as arson at showrooms and service centers, seemingly in protest of Musk and his role in the administration of President Donald Trump. These people are sick, twisted, and frankly, need to be put in prison for a very long time. You got to start making examples of this insanity because that's exactly what it is. Last night on CNN, Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful. God bless the man. He keeps going on CNN, and he keeps putting CNN in its place. Kevin, my gosh, the guy's on fire these days. Here he was last night on their roundtable show with Abby Phillips talking about this very issue and what's happening here in Kansas City and in other parts of the country.
Go back to point one. When you set a car on fire, you should go to jail. You're a criminal.
Any car,
I don't think we have to talk about it in any other context. Yeah. And all those cars have cameras in them, and those dealerships have cameras. You're beyond being stupid when you do that. You're going to go to jail, and you now
notice how some of the colleagues there were like, "Yeah, any car, you should, any car, yeah, okay." But we're talking specifically about Tesla cars because they're the ones who are getting lit on fire. It reminds me a few years ago of like when the Black Lives Matter movement became a thing. And if you were someone who said, hey, yeah, I mean, yes, Black Lives Matter, but I also think that, all lives matter. Oh, so what? You don't think Black Lives Matter? No, I'm saying like, yes, Black Lives Matter, but I think all lives matter. And we should just like treat people equally. And, it seems like a good thing to do and treat everybody with respect, regardless of skin color. No, you don't get it, man. Black Lives Matter. Now they're doing the whole all cars matter. Don't light other cars on fire. There's only one set of cars being lit on fire these days, champ. Come on.
We have a government that just got their mandate. They can't wait to find idiots that do this. You're going to spend 5 to 20 years in prison. If they get them on terrorism, which I think is a stretch, they will have no parole, no shortened sentence. They'll rot in hell in prison for 20 years. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, that's okay. Breaking in, shooting a car, setting on fire, nothing to do with the politics, nothing to do with Tesla. You are a criminal, and you should go
what about the broader
to
question
jail.
About the protest factor? I mean, you heard
what
Tim Walz.
protest? You're a criminal.
I'm talking about Tim Walz and his comments about the Tesla stock. He says it gives him a boost to see that stock going down.
That poor guy didn't check his portfolio and his own pension plan for state. It's beyond stupid what he did. He's talking down a 3.5% weighting in his own pension plan. I mean, what's the matter with that guy? He doesn't check the well-being of his own constituents in his state. I mean, that's their investment fund. Point, what a bozo.
I love it.
Let's go. Woo! What a bozo. Yeah, Tim Walz. I mean, he's too busy swinging his legs up and down like a rocket and waving to the crowd like he's Billy Joel after a sold-out show at T-Mobile to be sitting there and thinking about where the investments are for the pension funds in the state of Minnesota. And he's right to point that out, too. I mean, Tesla's a major part of anybody who has, like, an S&P 500 index fund or whatever. You've got a decent amount of Tesla in there. You should want Tesla to do well, you would think, unless you're so triggered by a man who showed up in D.C., voted for somebody you don't like, and says, hey, I think we should do something about this waste, fraud, and abuse in our federal government because we're in a place right now where we're $36 trillion in debt. It would seem like that would be a great thing to do. But no, we can't have that. So now we have people in the dark of night showing up, lighting Teslas on fire, including 5 miles down the road from where we're broadcasting from right now on State Line Road. You have it happening in other parts of the country. You have Tesla owners being intimidated. See, there's a coordinated effort and attack plan here. I'm never going to own, well, I shouldn't say never. Never say never. I don't want a Tesla. I'm not interested in a Tesla. I would never spend $100,000 on a Cybertruck. I think it's an ugly car. But if I was going to do that, I wouldn't think twice about it if I really wanted one. But the coordinated effort right now is to basically intimidate people. It's an intimidation factor. That's what it is. Where you will say to yourself, yeah, I would like a Tesla, but gosh, do I want to go to a dealership right now? Do I want to get harassed by protesters? Do I want to get flipped off at the stoplight over my vehicle? Oh, God, oh, God. So that's the coordinated effort here. Some may argue that it's similar to what happened. You could go back to the civil rights movement. You could go back to intimidation tactics by organizations like the Klan. You could make those comparisons if you so wanted to. You could do it.
I liken this to sometimes a barking dog approaches you, and they sense fear. But if you just say, hey, calm down, offer them the back of your hand. Sometimes I'm not, making light of that. But I'm suggesting as Mr. Wonderful goes into CNN, they're all barking at him and he's just calm.
He's calm and he's putting them right in his place.
It does, yeah.
It's
and
beautiful.
So it doesn't work then. Eventually the yapping shuts up.
Yes. Well, that's true with the adults, some adults on CNN. The problem with these protesters is they're raving lunatics. They are willing to risk years in prison to set a Tesla on fire in the middle of the night. That is not somebody who has any common sense. Big sit-down podcast conversation happened between Kylie Kelce, the wife of Travis Kelce's brother, Jason, and Michelle Obama. Now, this had a lot of people worked up. And I got a clip here. Mark listened to the whole thing. That was his task yesterday for the show, to listen to the Kylie Kelce, Michelle Obama podcast. And now he's raking me over the coals looking for some overtime because of it. But I told him to listen to the whole thing, which he mostly did. I didn't. That was his job. There's only so much I can do in a day. Sometimes I got to unload it on these guys. So here's a clip that is going viral from the conversation. And it actually, of all the things that Michelle Obama has said publicly, this is like the least offensive, most likable I've ever heard her. Because normally you hear Michelle Obama speak publicly and it's like, I'm a victim, America sucks. It's usually stuff like that. So of all the things I hear from Michelle Obama, I'm like, yeah, this is relatively harmless.
Hi, I'm Michelle Obama, and I'm not going to lie. Bedtime is the best time of the day. My husband teases me about how early I can go to bed. He just doesn't understand the idea of getting into some good sheets and it's cool. If we've got people in the house, I'm game. I'm there. I'm up. I'm in it. I'm laughing. I'm talking. But, the minute we finish up, I'm just trying not to go to bed before the sun goes down.
What's ideal bedtime?
Man, anytime after dinner.
That's lovely. Coming from someone who likes the AARP special reservation, which is the 5:30 reservation, I would love to be in bed by like 8:30.
The girls, they were good sleepers.
That's so lucky.
I know. Bath time, 7 o'clock, bedtime, 7:30. And then I had like at least a couple of hours where nobody was asking me for anything. And maybe that's where I got the early bedtime from.
As a morning person, I really appreciate that take because bedtime really is like, let's get in there.
That's right. It's just like lay down.
All right. Now, I know that's not a high standard to find the most likable thing that Michelle Obama has ever said publicly, but I will give credit where it's due and say, hey, there's one thing I've got in common with the Obamas. Our bedtime routine for our girls is pretty early based on, my schedule and our schedule and just being morning people in general. And it was also nice to hear a reference to her husband. There's been a lot of conversation and rumors and reports swirling on that front. So it was nice to hear that reference regarding Barry. Now, Mark, you listened to the rest of the interview, and what were your big takeaways from the interview?
Yeah, I mean, it's not shocking, but toward the beginning of the interview, Kylie lets Michelle know that she voted for her husband. So that was kind of a unique thing because I don't think Jason or Travis is talking about that kind of thing.
Yes. And you know what? That doesn't mean anything for how she voted last time around.
No.
I would add that. I mean, she was like 18 during Obama's first election,
2012,
right?
2012,
2008.
Or 2008.
2008. So she was 18. So listen, as someone who also voted in the 2008 election for my first presidential year and voted for McCain, it was not cool to vote for McCain when you were in college. I promise you that much. So that makes sense. Otherwise, how was it?
Yeah, and I mean, Michelle once again says she's not running for anything, so that was kind of a big thing from that.
Oh, she's okay. So we can put to bed the whole Michelle's going to run for something.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
That was kind of the biggest things. Otherwise, they're just moms talking about their kids and saying,
all right. I had cornered the domain I like Mike. And so I guess I'm going to have to sell that or put it up back to Jordan or somebody.
You bought the pins, too. Didn't you buy the pins?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, they were old I Like Ikes, and I just took a Sharpie and put an M in front of them. But those were my retro collector's ones.
Oh, man. All right. Good job, Mark. Thanks for listening for all of us. Now we don't have to do it.
No problem.
Well done. Here's the news out of Michigan. Troy, Michigan. Suspects on the run following a shooting at a hospital. Appearing right now, per the Troy, Michigan Police Department, to be an isolated incident. Fox News just running this headline here, sending out this push notification. There was a massive police presence outside of the hospital, according to Fox 2 in Detroit. And the local TV news station reports that one person has been shot. So they are working with law enforcement on that front. Just got done with the mayor of Kansas City. A lot of reaction flooding in on the text line and also the phone lines here on 95.7 FM. Dan, go ahead. You're on KCMO. What's up, big man?
Man, I just about spit out my coffee when Mayor Lucas called himself a small C conservative. That's the funniest dang thing I heard so far today.
Well, it's only 8 o'clock, buddy. Give yourself some time. There's plenty of funny things to hear throughout the afternoon.
Hey, I also wanted to give the guy some credit. You know, we all, for years, decades, we've been hearing people talk about this notion that charity is best served locally. And that's really what Mayor Lucas was talking about with his specific implementation for the bus fares. You know, just let existing places like the Rosa Parks, you know what I'm trying to say there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem if you're saying, hey, we're going to give bus fares to people who are, you know, coming out of a low-income rehab facility. Like that, no one's really going to have beef on that because it's a very, very small percentage of the population. And I knew he was not going to admit it, but the reality is free bus fare was an objective failure. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. They're going away from it. The KCATA thought it could do whatever it wanted. They blew out their budget, and now they're standing there with the handout saying, you know, can I get more? And the answer is there's no free lunch, and eventually someone's got to pay for all this stuff. And at least to the city's credit, they're saying, sorry, we're not doing this anymore.
Yep. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. I mean, look at the KCATA budget. It was a total from 2016 to 2023, they were running at about $76 to $84 billion, give or take, right in that range. The last 3 years, they've been over $100 million. This year, their request was for $117 million. In 22, it was $84 million. It's another, what? Do the math, $33 million, give or take, in the budget? At some point, you got to be accountable to yourself. But the mayor did allude to this, and he's right to say, listen, progressive groups just keep saying, well, give them the money, give them the money, give them the money. But the dirty little secret around free bus fare in this town is that the whole point of the free bus fare idea was driven by people looking at the streetcar and saying, hey, the streetcar is free. It's mostly for tourists and people who have money downtown, and you're making, you know, working schmoes pay for the bus. And, yeah, that's a bad look. The best way to do it would have been to charge for the streetcar. The problem then is no one rides it. And the vanity project that it is suddenly looks like a total bust because no one's paying for that thing. But if you charge for it, then the project looks bad. You can't extend it. But then on the other hand, you look bad because you're charging for the bus. So they tried the free bus. That's a total bust for a multitude of reasons, public safety, budgeting, everything else. And they got to go back to the way it was. But notice they're not going to charge for the streetcar. I don't know how you would do it anyway, but they're not going to do that when they probably should. Well, some sad news to report here for radio listeners in Kansas City. Dan Israel has passed away. Dan had been battling cancer for years now and was a huge part of the Kansas City Chiefs broadcast. I'm just seeing this on Kendall Gammon, who, of course, you hear during the NFL season on KCMO. His Facebook in the last 30 minutes reads, Dan Israel was one of the best people I've ever met in my life. Loved him like a brother. Rest in peace, my friend. I love you and will never forget you. That is from, of course, Kendall Gammon, who was on the broadcast team for a while. Now he's here with us doing weekly, bi-weekly hits during the NFL season, does a lot of work with our Fox Football Game Day show as well. Dan had been dealing with the cancer for a long time. There was a story on KCTV5 that was just a month and a half ago saying that the cancer had come back. And he was going to try to get through the Super Bowl, which was, of course, the following week. But as those of us who have dealt with loved ones who have suffered through cancer, it can obviously hit you very fast and very furious, John.
Dan had a tremendous impact on NFL broadcasting, actually. I'm not sure if he was there at the beginning, but for the Chiefs being on 101 back in the day, I think they might have been the second NFL team to ever go on the FM signal. And so then we had the whole concept of let's go to Art at the NFL desk and report around, and we'd have the people report in. So that all got set up here kind of with the Chiefs was one of the initial programs where other teams started to call and say, hey, how do you guys do that? And they would set up kind of the architecture, if you will, of how to broadcast that. And you set up the pregame and then the actual game, which John Taylor, who's still here, obviously was instrumental in implementing as well. But Dan was kind of the mastermind. He coordinated 8 or 9 people here on a Sunday, if you remember how that all went.
That was a big deal.
Yeah.
So the executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network broadcasts, he has had a seat at every Chiefs game since 1990. 35 years. And the guy has not missed a Chiefs game. Had not missed a Chiefs game. I'm sure the team will be honoring him next season when, of course, the year starts up again. Just done a tremendous job. And we actually had him on. He was our weekly or bi-weekly interview during the 2019 season leading up to that first Super Bowl. And of all our conversations with Dan, the one that sticks out to me the most is the morning after the Super Bowl win, which, of course, was the first one in 50 years and the first one during Dan's time as a member of the broadcast team. And it's the next morning. He's going on like 2 hours of sleep, but we got this hit at 7:05, so let's go, Dan. Let's get fired up, baby. Coming off a Super Bowl, and he was really emotional. And I don't mean that in a bad way. He was just, it was like, he just had another baby. Like he just had a kid. Like he was that emotional in a good way, which goes to show you how much he cared. And that's the one thing about Dan Israel. No one cared more about putting on an A-plus broadcast. I mean, he was a pro in every sense of the word when it comes to putting on a broadcast, John.
The guys, if they made a mistake around Dan, they made it once.
Yeah, that was him. And he obviously stayed with the broadcast crew when they left 101 The Fox and went across the street. And listen, I think he is just an all-time pro, and he definitely will be missed. I did not realize, I don't think most of us realized, that he was struggling that much these last few weeks. But the last time I saw a report on it was this February 7th piece by Neil Jones on KCTV5 saying that the cancer had come back, and he had been fighting this for 10 years. If I'm reminded here correctly, the cancer started 10 years ago. Yeah, here it is. Diagnosed with colon cancer, which then spread to his lungs. And at that time, one doctor said he had 12 months to live. But in classic Dan Israel fashion, he fought that SOB tooth and nail for a decade.
Yep.
And he stayed working through the entire thing.
Yeah.
Which is also amazing. I mean, those NFL seasons will grind on you, and he didn't miss a beat. It's really amazing stuff. So rest in peace to Dan Israel, and the Chiefs broadcasts will not be the same without him. There's no doubt about that. We are a few minutes away from our caller of the day on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. As always, we are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. On the sports front, we've got March Madness getting underway today. You've got KU playing at 6:10 tonight on CBS, and then you've got Mizzou tipping off at 6:35 on True TV. So Kansas playing Arkansas, Mizzou is playing Drake. Someone in the building the other day who's a big Mizzou fan and not as much of a diehard sports person said to me, hey, I saw that KU and Mizzou are playing at a similar time. Which one do you think is going to be on CBS? I'm like, really? We all know which one's going to be on CBS, okay? John Calipari and Bill Self are going to be on CBS in prime time, starting that second session, I guess you would say, at that 6 p.m. Central Time spot. That's the one that's going to be in prime time. It's not a knock on Mizzou. Mizzou's had a better season.
Well,
but
we won a conference game.
The TV networks do not care about that, okay? They're going for the eyeballs. KU, with that brand, in a 7-10 matchup, Bill Self and John Calipari, that's getting primetime billing. That's not going on
Absolutely.
True TV. I promise you that much.
You might have to look for True TV or some other
Yeah.
place to find Mizzou.
Yeah, you may have to go that route. That's okay. You'll find it. You'll find it.